Hello, Larry, my man. It's so nice to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing terrific, and thank you for the honor of being on your show.
Beautiful, and thank you so very much for being here. You see, I truly appreciate you. And you see, Larry, my man, oftentimes I love to thank my guest for two things. And I do this so often to the point where it has become my anthem. So, firstly, Larry, I want to say thank you so very much for investing in yourself. You see, you are on this platform right now, Larry, because you did invest it in yourself. And oftentimes, my man, I love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. You see, some couple of months back, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, Larry, there was this very tall, unattractive mango tree. And I used the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes on it, and the leaves were all dry. So I just walked past it and I went my way. But you see, Larry, just recently I was on that same road, and this time around, a lot's changed about the mango tree, you see. The mango tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance, and immediately I got the urge to move so close to it, of which I did, and it wowed me because now the mango tree's got a lot of mangoes on it, beautiful green leaves and earthy branches, and not just mangoes now, Larry. I'm talking about ripe mangoes. It was such a lovely experience that day, and I was so excited. Here's my point. The fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming the amazing Larry that you are today, that alone has made it impossible for me to skip you. And that's why you got the request from me to be on the show because I was attracted to the fruit of all that you're doing, your philosophies, your work,
Thank you very
yeah,
much.
the impact your work is having. And now you are offering your solutions, my man. This stuff's so beautiful. And just before I sent you that request, my man, I said to myself, I've got to benefit from these beautiful things Larry's doing. And not only me now, because I don't want to look selfish, and even with the audience. And here we had a day with the amazing Larry. So thank you so very much for doing that yourself. And secondly, thank you for saying yes to the invite. Because if you had said nope, there was nothing Elisha could do about it. Thanks so much, my man.
No problem, and thank you for the invitation.
Beautiful. So let's get started, Larry. You see, I am quite excited to have you on the show today for some reasons. My interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order for one to transition from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, Larry, I believe it takes the application of knowledge, the information, and not just knowledge alone, but the application of it. And you see, my man, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking. Why? Because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very important to me and even to the listeners. And the second reason why I'm excited to have the incredible Larry on the show is for the sake of the audience. You see, my man, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of informations flying out there. So these folks trust me for quality, eye-opening, and very important information, of which I am totally convinced, my man, that our conversation is going to be insightful and impactful. So, for that reason, Larry, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or your professional journey, because right now we are so curious. We want to know how Larry got here. And afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Larry, my man, over to you.
Sounds good. A little bit about myself. I'm currently 61 years old. Um I was raised in the Midwest of the United States near St. Louis, Missouri. I grew up in a fairly typical home. I have an older sister. My mom and dad grew up going to church, knowing the Lord, and then in went to college. and actually went to college for music. I was a piano major in college and then felt God's call to be an associate pastor. And so, for after college, I married my college sweetheart, Tammy, and we went to seminary in Southern Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. After graduating there over the next 25 years, I was an associate pastor leading worship in churches, youth ministry, education ministry, discipleship ministry, doing that. Then the last 10 years or so of that, I volunteered as a police fire chaplain in the city of Lincoln, Nebraska. Then something very unique happened to me, and that was I felt God's calling to become a military chaplain, a United States Navy chaplain, which was a challenge for me because I was already too old. I wasn't in shape. At that point in time, I weighed well over 300 pounds. Uh, I'm not sure what that translates into in where everybody's lives, but let's just say I was a big boy. And I didn't have the right degree in order to do it, but I felt God's calling to do that. And so over the next year and a half, I went back to school, got a Master of Divinity. I lost about 110 pounds
Wow.
and joined the Navy. And for the last 16 years, I've been a Navy chaplain. But then a few years ago, the Navy sent me to back to school to work in a hospital. In order to work in a hospital, you have to have what's called CPE units, or clinical pastoral education units. So I went through the Navy's program in San Diego, California, which is done jointly with the Veteran Affairs. So I did a residency at a Navy hospital and a residency in a veterans hospital, specifically working with veterans for PTSD. And as I learned more about that, also learning of my own journey in PTSD from my combat experience, because when I joined in 2009, obviously that was the height of going into Iraq, going into Afghanistan for combat for American military. And so at the age of 45, when I joined the Navy, I found myself in combat in Afghanistan with a Marine Corps infantry battalion. It was a life-altering experience, and I learned a lot. Then as I came back and worked with those with PTSD, I also learned about something else called moral injury. And quite often they go hand in hand. I came back and did a tour as a hospital chaplain, and now I'm back working with the Marines. This will be my final billet. I will age out of the Navy next year, move on to whatever God has next. But as I did that, I began to realize more and more that while chaplains, mental health professionals knew a lot about moral injury, local pastors did not, and local churches did not. As I was stationed in different places around the United States, going on deployments, talking with pastors in these different places, realizing that very, very few of them knew what moral injury was at all. And while many people, and probably many people listening to us right now, have a pretty good idea what PTSD is, most churches, most individuals, unless you're already dealing with it, don't really know what moral injury is. And there's a reason why people should want to know it. There's a reason why churches should care about it. And quite often, moral injury will go hand in hand with PTSD. Moral injury is when we do something, or maybe choose not to do something, quite frankly, often with someone in leadership over us telling us what to do. But that decision, that action goes so against our moral and spiritual beliefs that it breaks us emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And quite often that goes hand in hand with PTSD. We know that PTSD is fear-based because we were afraid for our lives, we were traumatized, but quite often for some folks, you get traumatized with PTSD, something happens to you, but perhaps your reaction to it goes against everything you believe in. And so then that re traumatizes you because now you're dealing with something you did that you didn't think you would ever do. And you become actually almost double traumatized if you can actually think of it that way.
Wow. I tell you, I never knew that concept that way. Moral injury. Boy, and thank you so very much for explaining that. What an interesting journey. And something that stood out pretty good is the fact that you were always attentive to whatever it is that the Lord wants you to do. You're always tuning in and ensuring that you get it done. And that's a beautiful one. You mentioned that when you wanted to start the Navy stuff, you didn't have all that is required, but the Lord wanted you to do it. And you committed into doing it. That's a beautiful one. And I got that. So let us talk about trauma. Okay. So how does trauma affect spirituality?
That is a terrific question. Well, if you think about it, sometimes when trauma happens, the individual, sometimes it becomes a block. Their idea of God, that the trauma kind of destroys that. How could a good God allow for me to go through such a horrible situation? Or in another instance, with the trauma that happens and perhaps the person's reaction, then they almost feel like they're infected with evil, and God would, in their mind, they think God doesn't want anything to do with me anymore, which is, you and I both know that's not true. But sometimes that trauma can be so intense and their reaction to it, they feel like they're no longer worthy to be forgiven, worthy to be loved by their family, by their friends, even by God.
Assault.
Assault, thank you. For the very same things that we just talked about, someone may feel like, how could God allow that sexual assault to happen? And so that impacts their spirituality. Or they feel like they must have done something wrong, done something horribly wrong in order for this assault to happen to them. So they may feel like God is trying to punish them in some way, shape, or form through this. Or they may feel like because maybe they had a reaction to the sexual assault that they weren't expecting, their body reacted in a particular way to that sexual assault that they're deeply ashamed of, they feel very guilty about, and they feel that perhaps because of that, God can't love them anymore.
So now, that's a great response. How can they come out of that? How can they escape such thinking?
That's a great way. That's a great question. And what happens is you need a safe place to talk about it. You need a safe place to walk through it. You need someone to come alongside you and, first of all, sit with you in the hurt rather than deny that it's there. You can't deny that that hurt and pain is there. Denial will never work. You need to sit in it. You need to recognize it for what it is, and then you need to begin uh, to walk back, and finding someone who can listen to you in a non-judgmental way is a great way to begin with that. A pastor, a counselor, a friend, someone who can listen to what you've been through and not be judgmental with you, and then show you that God's love, that God loves you, that this was not a mean punishment from God, but actually a result of, unfortunately, living in a very fallen world. And then from there, you can start working with scripture. You can also start working with different liturgies and rituals. That's what we have done with working with people. For instance, one thing that we do with some individuals is we let them take Psalm 51 and they personalize it. They rewrite it using events from their life to help show God's love for them and God's forgiveness.
That's a beautiful one. And that's a smart approach, dwelling on God's word. I got that. So you were talking about something very beautiful, moral injury, and the concept, The words, the combination of those two words sounds really new to me. So I wanted you to talk more on that. So what is moral injury? And you were talking about how it is so different from PTSD. So can you talk to us about what moral injury is and how it is different from PTSD?
Moral injury is when we choose to do something, sometimes at the direction of someone in authority over us, that goes against everything that we believe in, morally, ethically, spiritually. And that decision is at such a level that it breaks us. It breaks us emotionally. It breaks us spiritually. It can break us mentally to the point that we feel so infected by evil that we have to separate ourselves. We'll separate ourselves from our family. We'll separate ourselves from our faith. We'll separate ourselves from our friends. And we are so isolated by shame and guilt that we no longer feel that we could ever be loved or forgiven again. And how that differs from PTSD, as we discussed earlier, PTSD is fear-based. So we were traumatized by something that scared us, that threatened our lives, and that emotionally broke us. But there's not shame involved in that. Where moral injury has an overwhelming amount of guilt and shame. Now, sometimes they are packed on top of each other. I've worked with a lot of the military who have both PTSD and moral injury, and the interesting thing is until you address the PTSD, the moral injury doesn't get any better, and then you begin to work with both of them. But it's not just military. It could be a first responder. It could be a policeman, a firefighter, a paramedic. It could be someone in the medical field who feels like they have let someone down, let them die, or let them come to great harm, and they feel like maybe some way, somehow they should have prevented that. And they place all of that guilt and shame on themselves.
Wow. Thank you for explaining that. And I think that's a very important one. So how can their loved ones, how can they help them? Got it?
That's a that's a good question. Um, Understand that your loved one's going to push back. As you try to help them, they're going to push back. And they're pushing back because they think they're doing you a favor. They think, don't come near me, don't touch me, don't do this because if you stay in my sphere, I'm going to infect you with my evil. So, first of all, love them unconditionally. Secondly, they're going to push back, and sometimes they're going to push back hard. They're going to say things that are not nice in order to try to get you to push back. But you have to keep providing that continuity of love. You have to let them, if they do decide to share with you what's going on, be a safe space. Be a safe space. For instance, we had one gentleman that we were working with. He had done some things while on a deployment, and he was deeply ashamed by them. And he had withdrawn from his faith, from his family, from friends. He was the grumpy old guy in the office. He was a civilian here on base. He decided to come to a moral injury group that we have here. And as he came, he realized, I'm not going to get any better until I share with my spouse what happened on this deployment. Now, understand, that had been 20 years previous. He had let this fester inside of him for 20 years, this shame, this guilt. And then as he came to our group and began working through his trauma, he realized he couldn't hide this from his wife anymore. And so he sat down and he told her what had happened in his deployment. and his wife provided him a safe space. She listened to everything that he had to say, and then she said, "Honey, I love you. There's nothing for me to forgive. I love you, and I will always love you and be here for you." And what that did to him was nothing less than transformational. I saw him the other day where he was the grumpy guy in the office. Now he's the guy with the smile in the
Wow.
office, smiling and laughing with everyone. He's dropped about 50 pounds
Ooh.
because he is eating his tension. He's having regular date nights with his wife. He's renewed his relationship with his daughter. And it's about addressing that shame and guilt and not trying, as you said, not trying to hide it in the dark, but to bring it out in the light where the love of Christ can shine on it.
Mm, beautiful, beautiful. That's a very interesting story, and thank you for sharing that, my man. And I'm gonna take that as a final thought. So, for folks who would like to reach out to you, Larry, and be a part of the wonderful stuff you're doing, or even ask you questions, how can that be possible?
Well, you can reach out to me. My email is chapsbrant@yahoo.com. You can reach out to me there, CHAPSBRANT at yahoo.com. I have a book coming out on the 3rd of February. It's called Restoring the Broken. And if you would like to check the book out, check out the website. It's because it will be available on Amazon. It is www.restoring-the-broken.com. And we'll have that. It will be available in print and in Kindle.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's a great one. So that's gonna be the end of the show, my man. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing this wonderful stuff with us. It means a whole lot, Larry. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the honor of being on your show.
Okay.